Ready for more stories? Welcome to Reminiscing, our Highline history, a radio show presenting the memories of our community in the Highline area. Listen to a new episode every week, Monday and Tuesday, with your host, Roger Price, at 106.5 LP FM, South King County.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Price, and I'm here today at the Highline Heritage Museum, and I'm going to do an interview with Jan Noorda. He was an architect in Burien for many years, but so I'm going to kind of turn it over to Jan. He can kind of talk us through where his office was and his coming to Burien and what brought him to Burien and different things. So, Jan?
Are you supposed to read the call numbers?
Oh, that's...
Oh, okay.
So...
All right. Well, I came to Burien in 1979 after I had finished my master's or bachelor's of architecture at the University of Idaho. I wanted to live in a West Coast city, a major West Coast city. And so I thought I would interview in San Francisco and in Seattle. San Francisco is where my grandparents were. So I thought that might be kind of fun. And I also had some contacts there. While I was in San Francisco, I reconnected with an old sweetheart of mine in high school sweetheart, who was in Long Beach at the time. I called her and she flew up to San Francisco, and we drove down the coast, Highway 1, and fell in love and eventually got married. And she came to Burien with me as I started my apprenticeship or my internship. I interviewed, I don't know if you know architecture, it's a difficult thing to get a job. There's, they used to call it architorture, actually. But I interviewed in a firm, several firms, but one in particular was Shavy DeGrasse and Shavy. They had an office, Pike Street Market, down where the activity was. And I interviewed with a gentleman named Merge DeGrasse, who liked what I had to say, but couldn't offer me a job at the time. But he suggested that I check out an architectural firm in Seahurst, Washington, Sasanoff and Mecklenburg, where he served his internship. And so I came out to interviewed with Alex Sasanoff, and he hired me, and I began my 3-year required internship. Architecture is a profession that not only requires a 5-year professional degree, but they require 3 years of an internship. And then you take your state boards, which is a long, involved process that only about 25% pass every year. Anyway, I served my apprenticeship with Alex, and in 1979 and 1982, I passed my boards and got a license. Architectural license, but I was so comfortable with Alex and Bruce Mecklenburg that I decided to hang around a little bit longer than I should have, probably. I was there for 2 more years I served. And then I decided to go out and hang my own shingle up, which is what led me to Old Burien. I noticed there was an office available, or there was a building, the vacant second floor next to Jim Moore's Steakhouse, and I inquired and rented this second floor office in this Cape Cod style house. It's no longer there. I had a spiral staircase up to the second floor. It was a perfect little office for me. Spent a year remodeling it, and then it burned to the ground.
Wow. Yes, I remember the house. It was kind of between the old post office and Jim Moore's Steakhouse. Very, very neat old house. So that was kind of cool.
I rented a little house nearby where I could actually see my office through the window. And one night I woke up and there were flames on my, reflecting through the window on my bedroom wall. Got up and looked, and I could see the flames roaring on all that work that I had done. Anyway, I went across the street and I rented another office from a gentleman named Greg Huey, who owned the old Joe Tennis building. And I got the corner office on 10th and 152nd. And that was an ideal location for me.
Oh boy, I read a few articles about old Joe Tennis back in the early 50s and the late 40s. He was quite a up and comer and a go-getter, because he was actually, when he lived in Tacoma for a while, he was mayor in Tacoma, and he ran for mayor in Seattle at one time. He didn't quite make it, but he was also behind a lot of the getting the First Avenue Bridge building or bridge getting going. So it was
I'll be darned.
yeah, he had a lot of influence on that First Avenue South Bridge.
Well, I know he was a justice of the peace, because there was someone, and I can't remember who, that came up to me and said, I was married in your office.
Oh,
So,
and I believe also that building was the old Water District
yes.
49 building,
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history there.
Yeah. There was at the time I rented the second floor, there was a consignment shop on the main floor that faced the street. And eventually, my new wife decided to go into the consignment business. So we bought, I wish I could think of her name, bought her out, and she opened up the consignment shop in the same building that I had my office.
Oh, cool.
So,
well, that was so that led to other things, but you had your office on the second floor. And so you were there for, well, many years, weren't you?
yeah. I was there for about 6 years, but the thing that I enjoyed about Old Burien was all the merchants. We had a real strong Old Burien Merchant Association in that little 2-block area.
Oh,
And we had put together spring festivals where we went through the county and got the street closed, that 2-block area. And then we had a Christmas festival where we had an old trolley that we painted up to mimic the original trolley.
mm-hmm.
We used to sell roasted chestnuts out of that, and I was going to say hot dogs, but it wasn't really hot dogs. They were Polish sausage.
Oh, I see.
And we had a real strong merchants association. I remember Phyllis Allardyce was the realtor in Prestige Properties there across the street from me. And she was very active. Bob Simpson, Juanita Simpson, who had J. Loris Jewelers, her son is still there in the old first floor of the building. But we did a lot of things. We we actually raised funds, and we bought planters and plant for that 2 block area. We bought amenities. There was a little space between what is now 909 and a little outdoor area. It used to be just a weed patch.
Yes, I can remember
and
it.
Bob Simpson and I went in and paved that thing and put some grass in. We planted a Christmas tree, a permanent Christmas tree that we could decorate every year there. One thing we did, there were a lot of absentee landlords from China, believe it or not, that owned properties in Old Burien. And we told them that if they would buy the materials, we would paint the buildings.
Oh,
And we actually painted the town
wow.
from that 2 block area.
Uh-huh. Sure, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Unique. I know your building was right next door to Ernie Edler's
Eaters, yeah.
Eater's
Right.
tin shop.
Yeah,
Tin room
yeah,
now,
yes.
but so
And Ernie was I enjoyed knowing Ernie, and he had a couple of sons too. One, I believe, is still doing tin work out of his garage here.
Oh,
At
uh-huh.
least he was the last I knew. But Ernie was an adamant anti-incorporation. He voted against the Highline. I think 4 times they tried to incorporate the area. And the time that I got involved, we decided that Highline wasn't the good name. We needed to name it Burien. And Ernie liked that idea.
Oh,
He liked that idea. And well,
you got the Burien to finally get some backing, and I believe, when was it, around 80, 90 or so, 1990, that they finally voted it in?
that's 92.
92.
Yeah,
Okay.
they voted in, but the preliminary work was done in the late 80s. I think it all started with what we call the business improvement area. It was called the BIA. And what that was a group of merchants in Burien decided to get together and raise funds by taxing themselves. And we needed a 60% vote to enact this tax. And so we went door to door, up and down 152nd and 153rd, and all throughout that area to convince people that we needed to raise some funds so that we could market Burien, so we could improve Burien. When I came, there were 600 fiercely independent businessmen in Burien. And the opportunity was get them all on the same page. And that's what we worked on. Passing that BIA was I think the first thing that happened towards incorporation, towards realizing that we live in a beautiful place. We are on Puget Sound. We have an ideal location next to the airport. Yeah, we hear a few jets once in a while, but it's still a very convenient location to the metro area. And
yes, absolutely. And the jets are much quieter than they were.
That's right.
50 years ago too.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, until they start flying directly over us during the Seafair, right? Right. But it's a temporary thing.
Yeah. So you were also now, I think there was a time during 94, 95 that what happened then? Was that were you gone for a little bit, or?
Yeah, both my parents came down with terminal cancer. They lived in Pocatello, Idaho, where I went to high school and kind of grew up. They I have four brothers, and I'm the oldest. And they called me and said Dad was just taken to Salt Lake for brain surgery. And so it was kind of a traumatic thing for our family. And I felt, as the oldest, I needed to do something. And so I packed up all my house in a storage, rented a storage room, and I kept my office with my answering machine. I had clients, Sears Medical Center, well, a few clients that where it was a continuous type of thing. They were always calling. So I had to be available for them. So I would come up and spend several weeks on a cot in my house. I'd bring my son, my 13-year-old son, and we'd camp out in Burien.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you could catch up on your things.
Right.
And then between going back and forth between Pocatello, being a caregiver for your parents,
Right.
and coming here. Sure.
And both my parents, they passed away within 2 weeks of each other. And that was in 95. But I was glad to do that. It was
Oh, absolutely.
to finish, to be with them at that time and kind of manage the situation. That was something I'll cherish, the
Sure.
rest of my life, having that time with them.
And then somewhere in there, you got involved with Cindy up the Grove and the museum.
Well, yeah, the funny thing, when I came back to Burien, both my parents had passed away, and I had inherited some cash and some stocks, etc. And that gave me the opportunity to buy a nice house in Burien. And I happened to buy one right next door to Cindy up the Grove. And I got to know Cindy and John very well. And Cindy was a hard person to say no to. I would say that Cindy was the reason that we are in this building right now. She was the driving force behind the Highline Heritage Society, as well as the Highline Heritage Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And when this building became available, Cindy asked me if I would come in and do some architectural work. And I did come in, and I did some as-built drawings of the old building and documented what was here and what was there and how it could be renovated into a museum. Turns out that after we looked at it for a while, the best thing to do would be to raise the building and build a new one.
Oh, start from scratch, from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the architectural firm that was hired, but they did a fine job.
Well, a lot of the buildings in this particular area, Old Burien, they call it, were very old buildings built back in the 20s. So
Yeah.
they were built on wood foundations and maybe just right on the dirt. So a lot of them, once you get into it, it's better just to start brand new again, because it would be a real money pit if you didn't. So
yeah, especially for a museum, a modern museum, that's for sure. But you're right. The old Burien is the original commercial area in Burien, and a lot of the buildings, like you say, had no concrete foundation. In fact, when we did the park, the little pocket park with the Christmas tree next to 909. The building that Jay Loris was in, the smaller building on the west side, it was tilting. So Bob and I climbed under that thing and then jacked it up and put new concrete foundation in it, and it became a juice bar right away.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. They were popular at that time.
Yeah. But I loved Old Burien. We had a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you and also you helped a lot with bringing in of the things that we use for exhibits and displays in the museum.
Well, Cindy, like I said, was a hard person to say no to, and I was involved in every move that we had. The Angle Lake, we had the lakeside or the Lakeview Park was a building, an old Highline School District building that that housed the exhibits, and there were some people there, and I can't think of their names. Cindy would be the one to talk to about who was instrumental in helping. But yeah, when this was the moves from Lakeview to Angle Lake, was a pretty big deal. I mean, even then there was a lot of exhibit material.
Sure, it was a big job.
Yeah, and
it went into kind of a storage there at Angle Lake for a number of years.
Yeah, and John Updegrove had his vision at the time, Cindy's husband, and we laid carpet in Angle Lake, the two of us. Then the move from Angle Lake to here was a big move too. And you were involved in that, Roger. I remember we did a lot of trips.
Yes. That was a lot of work. It sure was.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the initial phase of the building of the museum, but after we moved, I got involved because I kind of wanted to volunteer for something. So
yeah, well, this is a great place to do that. Yeah, we also, there was fortunately there was a what they called a doll museum in Bellevue that was going defunct. And they had these glass cases and cabinetry, a ton of it, that they donated to our museum. And the trick was to get them from there to here.
Oh, sure, absolutely, big move.
But some of the cabinetry that's existing in the museum today is from that dollhouse.
Yeah, that's where a lot of it came from, wasn't it? And that saved the museum some money right there.
Oh, thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Well, gee, that was a great deal that happened to come along at that time. Unfortunate for the Doll Museum, but fortunate for the Highline Heritage Museum.
Yeah.
Well, gee, I guess, So Jan, what else was you involved with? Any other volunteer work or?
Well, I've put my nose in just about everything. The incorporation movement was an important focus of mine in the late 80s and early 90s. Kathy Scarborough, who lives on Lake Burien, and I jointly designed the Burien Yes yard signs for incorporation. And we were both involved with Arun Javari, among many other people.
The first mayor of Burien.
Well, yeah, but he's the one that instigated and organized the whole incorporation movement. He's a historic figure. His picture should be on the building here, I think, among some other important pictures. people. Like Jerry Robinson.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Who was the Highline Times publisher in Burien for years. That's where we all got our news.
Jerry.
And the museum has, I
Exhibit.
think, a extensive exhibit of every issue that was put out.
Exactly. I've used those Highline Times for reference so much. It's just been a great. It's really a nice deal that we have all those here.
I knew Jerry very well because when I was apprenticing with Alex Zasinoff, I was the draftsperson on his house on Three Tree Point.
Oh,
And I got to know Jerry very well. In fact, he was one of my favorite people in Burien.
Okay.
He and his wife, Beth. Jerry took me fishing out on the Sound one time, caught my first salmon.
Oh, yeah, he did a lot of things, old Jerry Robinson, and his sons they took over, and they're doing, and now it's kind of gone to more of a digital format or whatever now, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the late 80s, we had no representation, no government here in Burien. We had our only political representative was Paul Barden, who was a King County councilman. And Paul, I was also a member of the Kiwanis Club that I joined years before. But Paul asked me to serve on a committee. It's called there was a Highline community plan that the county had, and they wanted to update that plan. So he asked me to serve on the Burien Activity Center update to the Highline community plan, which I did. And actually, Jerry Robinson was on the committee at the same time, among many other people. Where we, among other things, there were some issues, some zoning issues that we were involved in, involving Puget Sound Junior High on 128th. But one of the things we did was to hire a consulting firm, Don Miles and Associates, to prepare a downtown urban design plan. Which was an initial comprehensive study that looked at our urban design framework, our streets, our gateways, our pedestrian focal points, parking. It looked at our streetscape, and it also looked at the Burien Transit Center. Mm-hmm. That was coming an issue coming up at the time. And there was a lot of growing pains at that time for the city. SeaTac expansion, the third runway, that was a big issue that was coming up. There was also conversation about Seattle annexing White Center along with Burien. And then there was King County was starting to rezone our area for increased density, for more apartments. And because we weren't a city, we had no one to even speak up to that issue. One of the reasons that we became a city is so that we could have a voice in our own future. And this voice was led by Arun Javari. And Arun proposed a city with a common area in the middle of downtown. Arun led the fifth attempt to incorporate Highline, or Burien in this case. And his arguments were the local control would increase individual freedoms. Local control would impact the area's social structure. Home rule, ruled by the locals, is more responsive. And he created what they call BASIC, BASIC, Burien Area Study Incorporation Committee. Instrumental in becoming a city with our own voice in our government. A lot of folks were against it because they figured it'd be another layer of government.
Sure.
And it'd be more expensive, more taxes, et cetera. But in May 1990, the county introduced a new zoning plan for Highline. This brought the issue home to Burien and Highline. Having local control over zoning issues has been a big part of the drive for incorporation. Highline once topped the list for apartment densities in King County. So in 1991, the county actually hired an outfit to study the effects of incorporation, of Burien incorporation. I don't want to ramble on here, Roger.
Oh, well, it is eventually, though, he had a lot to do with getting the ball rolling and getting Burien incorporated. Yes.
One other committee I served on, which I'm kind of proud of, was I don't know if you've heard the BBEDP, the Burien Business Economic Development Partnership. Gene Pfeiffer, does that name ring a bell?
Oh, I knew some Pfeiffers, but I don't know if it's might have been a relative.
Yeah, well, the Burien Business and Economic Development Partnership was a committee for the city after we were incorporated. And they created a special downtown park committee called the Downtown City Square Center Project. A lot of conversation had gone on earlier. Arun wanted the common area in downtown, but at that time, Mayor Kitty Milne asked me to serve on the committee, the Downtown Park Committee. And I did. And then I was actually chairman of that committee for the short time that it was in existence. And out of that, we hired, the city hired an outfit called Hyatt Palma. I don't know if that rings a bell.
No.
They were the pros from Dover. And they said their message was, if you build it, they will come. And so we applied for grants. I don't know if you remember, 152nd used to be a 4-lane freeway.
Sure.
Yeah, I had some close calls on that, the pedestrian crossings.
Sure, that was when I was in high school, actually. It was like that.
But we decided what would be ideal for Burien would be to have a pedestrian core, a pedestrian friendly core, business core. And so we got rid of the 4 lanes and went to 2 lanes and angled parking. There was a lot of people that said angled parking is a bad idea. And of course, there's always somebody saying no.
Sure.
But we did that. We did a lot of amenities. We did street lamps and flower pots that we have these days. We did Christmas decorations. We did new planters. We did garbage retainers, did benches and upgraded sidewalks and put bollards in different places. That was if we build it, they will come. And you know what? They came.
Uh-huh.
We used to have no parking problem in Burien. In fact, most of the city was one flat parking lot. But now we have a little bit of a parking problem,
Oh, yes.
which means we have people that are using the city.
Oh, that's right.
And they're walking, and we've got businesses coming in. And I know when I was in the old Burien Merchants in old Burien. I kept track of the businesses that came and go for the years that I was there, that came and went. And it's the old American dream. It's the toughest thing in the world to start a business. 95% of new businesses fail. And so I have a list of these different businesses that came and went in Old Burien. Now, very few businesses leave, and there's always someone coming in, giving the American dream a go. Anything else?
Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. I remember though, back in it was, I believe in the 60s, 70s, there was 2 lanes going each way in Burien, and plus there was parking on the sides too.
Yeah.
It wasn't angle, it was parallel parking, which was kind of it was a headache too, but so it's changed, and it's much more pedestrian friendly now, and much more walking. So I know that it's turned into and it's nice, and I'm sure that most of the merchants like this new configuration that they have in Burien. But well, Jan, that's been kind of interesting, very interesting, I should say. But so thank you very much for coming in and sharing your experience here in Burien, and your architecture, and your watching your office burn down. I'm sure that wasn't a fun time, but we've gotten through it and moving on. So
well,
thank you.
My pleasure, Roger. I would just like to finish with what I'm doing these days.
Oh,
I'm retired, but I'm still a member of Kiwanis, and Kiwanis is a community service organization that raises funds for the youth, for the kids. And I sell hot dogs at the stadium to raise funds for the kids. We have a 10-acre camp, Camp Schoenwald, that we maintain. And we have a lodge there, and a giant teepee, and several Adirondacks, and some sheds. We have caretakers' quarters on both sides. Excuse me. But the Kiwanis is for the kids. And I've also been a trustee with the Highline Schools Foundation for the last 10, 11 years. And the foundation is exactly the same thing. It raises funds for the enhancement of education in a Highline school district. We give grants to teachers to enhance the classroom experience. We give scholarships, and we provide food pantries at different schools. We provide shoes and coats. We have fundraisers every year that to support the Highline School District. You'd be surprised at how many kids in our district don't have a heavy coat to wear in the winter or shoes, So I'm really proud of my work with the Highline Schools Foundation. I'm also in support the Para los Niños, which is a Latin. Para los Niños is for the kids. And so they're an organization that teaches English to the immigrants, to integrate them into our culture.
Oh, great.
And they teach the English to the adults too. They have a nice building on 6th Avenue. The old Dave Hawthorne.
Okay, sure. As I know,
Right.
it was a pet store at one time back.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. Um, so I think our children are our future. And I think a lot of the problems that we've had with our homelessness, with our crime, uh, it can all look back or go back to our education system, our public education system. I think that is critical that we support our public education system.
Mhm.
If we don't, we have dropouts. You might as well give them a tent on their way out the door.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's my spiel.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. And a lot of people, I'm sure, appreciate the extra effort you put into all these different organizations. So that's a very admirable thing to do, Jan. So
Well,
I think a lot of people will appreciate that.
well, if they do or if they don't, doesn't matter. Just the fact that I'm doing it gives me uh, a reward, an intrinsic reward that maybe I have helped somebody along the way.
Yeah.
It's not a big turnaround. It's more of a,
Transition or
well, it was explained to me one time is that a person's life is like a big ship of state that's moving along and and in order to change the direction, you're not going to turn it on a dime. But on the ship, there's a rudder. And on the rudder, there's a little trim tab. And if you can touch the trim tab just a little bit and make a small change over time, that will make it turn it into a big change. So I'm working on the trim tab. And
there you go.
So
It's a lot of patience, and things don't happen overnight.
they sure don't. No.
But it's a work in progress. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, Roger. I would like to ask a question. Maybe you could, not the one to answer this, but I noticed we just put photographs on the side of our building.
Uh-huh.
Who are those people?
Now that is, I guess the answer would have to be from Nancy, the
Okay.
director of the museum, because I'm really not that familiar. I'm not familiar with any of them.
I'm not either. I was looking for your face.
So,
or
yeah.
Cindy's face.
Well,
or
I think it's
Jerry Robinson's
will
face.
be a revolving pictures.
Is it revolving?
I think over time, yeah, it will be changed.
Okay.
They're not permanent, but they're in honor of something right now.
Are they citizens of Burien
I'm
or
not quite
Highline?
sure about that.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to have something to do with Highline though. So
Okay. Well, I'll ask Nancy on the way out.
okay, well, all right. I think that's gonna complete it today from KQWZ 106.5 FM. We're finishing up this interview. Thank you.